A friend is someone that we are supposed to trust, someone that we can go to in our time of need. Unfortunately, not everyone is who they seem. Some people start as friends, then turn into your enemies, even without you knowing. This is Jessica Wongso, and these pictures were taken after she was charged in the death of her best friend. On January 6, 2016, Jessica Wongso and Mirna Salihin would meet with their other friend, Hani, at a coffee shop. The pair had met and become close friends after bonding over their shared Indonesian heritage while attending school in Sydney. Jessica would arrive at the coffee shop before the rest of her friends. She would order drinks for her friends and waited for their arrival. Mirna and Hani would arrive at the coffee shop to meet Jessica. As Mirna sat down to catch up with friends, she took a sip of the iced coffee her friend Jessica had graciously bought for her. Immediately, Mirna would start waving her hands in front of her mouth.
Bad. This is awful.
Hani would take a sip of the coffee as well and agreed that it wasn't good. When Mirna offered the drink to Jessica, she declined. A couple of moments later, Mirna collapsed and started convulsing. Horrified patrons would rush by Mirna's side to help and call 911, and Mirna would be taken to the hospital where doctors tried to resuscitate her for 15 minutes, but unfortunately, she would be pronounced dead. Investigators believed Mirna's sudden death was a result of poising. Investigators would check out the CCTV footage inside the coffee shop, hoping that could potentially shed a light on what happened. What investigators saw only heightened their suspicions. The discovery was enough evidence for investigators to charge Jessica Wongso in the murder of Mirna Salihin. Mirna's family refused to do an autopsy on Mirna, resulting in the medical examiner only being able to take a sample from Mirna's stomach. The results showed that Mirna's abdominal organs were damaged by a corrosive substance. The prosecution argued Jessica decided to murder her friend after Mirna suggested to her that she break up with her boyfriend while she, herself, had just gotten married. The prosecution believed that fueled Jessica's jealousy.
The victim, Mirna, suggested to the defendant to break up with her boyfriend, who was often rough and a drug user. Mirna asked why date a bad person who doesn't have any capital.
The advice allegedly caused tension in their friendship due to Jessica becoming more angered and embittered by Mirna's advice, to the point that Jessica cut contact with Mirna off. Ultimately, Jessica's relationship with her boyfriend would come to an end, and she would also find herself in legal troubles. The prosecution believed that Jessica reconciled with Mirna and arranged to meet her in order to carry out her revenge plan. Jessica's strange actions prior and after Mirna's death only added to her guilt, according to the prosecution. They would bring up the CCTV footage as evidence. The footage showed Jessica arriving early to the coffee shop and looking around the restaurant. Jessica would then leave the coffee shop to go to a nearby shop to purchase 3 soaps and requesting they be placed in separate bags. Jessica would then proceed to buy 3 drinks, 2 cocktails and 1 iced coffee, then walked to table 54. The server brought the drinks to table 54, where Jessica then places the 3 shopping bags containing the soap in a way that blocked the view of the iced coffee from the cameras. The prosecution alleges this is the moment that Jessica added cyanide to the iced coffee, afterwards removing the bags from table and onto the couch. Mirna and Hani would arrive at the coffee shop, and the women would hug before sitting together. Mirna would then take a sip from her iced coffee and collapse, which would lead to her death. The CCTV footage shows the moments where everyone rushed to aid Mirna as she was unknowingly losing her life. Everyone but Jessica. The footage showed Jessica on the sidelines, simply looking at Mirna amongst the chaos. Jessica had a bunch of lawyers representing her at trial. Her defense stated that there were no witnesses that saw Jessica in possession of cyanide, nor saw her placing anything inside of the iced coffee, and most importantly, there is no evidence that supports that Jessica ever poured it into the drink. The defense continued by ripping apart the prosecution's boyfriend advice claim as Jessica's motive, describing it as absurd and the allegations against her as baseless.
It does not make sense that Jessica flew all the way from Australia to Indonesia to murder Mirna. It also does not make sense that Jessica would murder Mirna because she had once asked Jessica to end her relationship with her boyfriend at the time.
Jessica's lawyers argued the fact that Jessica was immediately considered a suspect and has remained the only suspect in the case. Her lawyers found this suspicious because there weren't only 2 girls there that day, there were 3. Their friend Hani was also there when Mirna died. They questioned why Hani was never considered a suspect. Her lawyers even suggested that some of the cafe employees could also be potential suspects. The prosecution argued they recreated the events of that day. They even involved coffee shop employees that were present the day of Mirna's death. That's when the prosecution found an important clue, the color of the iced coffee. The coffee shop employees state that the color of the iced coffee should be a dark color, and that's the color it was when it was delivered to table 54. However, when Mirna took a sip of the drink, it was a yellow color. Darmawan Salihin, Mirna's father, vowed that he would seek justice for his daughter's death. He would discuss in an interview how
Mirna had felt uncomfortable around Jessica for quite some time. She would always ask either her husband, sister, or friend Hani to accompany her whenever she met up with Jessica.
the death penalty was sought out by some in regard to Jessica's potential sentencing, but due to a deal between the Australian and Indonesian governments that prohibited such sentencing. The deal was that in order for the Australian Federal Police to provide information about the lives of the two girls along with Jessica's criminal past, they had to receive a guarantee from Indonesia that the death penalty would neither be sought out nor applied to this case. Indonesia doesn't have trial by jury in their law systems. A person is determined to be guilty or not guilty by a panel of judges. Jessica would be found guilty of putting cyanide inside of Mirna's iced coffee and was sentenced to 20 years in prison in 2018. In 2024, to the dismay of some, Jessica was released from prison after only serving 6 years under the condition that she stay in Jakarta, Indonesia until 2032. After her release, Jessica would do an interview during which she would explain that her and Mirna weren't really friends.
We weren't close at all. We came from the same country. We weren't best friends or anything. After graduation, she went back to Indonesia for good, and I stayed in Australia.
When Jessica was asked what made her put the bags on the table, her response was,
Oh, it's just being me. Like I just put it there, shuffled it, and played with it. And it's like just, being bored, it really doesn't mean anything at all. Like, if I have to be honest with you,
Jessica would then go on to talk about Mirna's death.
I think she just took a sip. And after that, she was saying something like, it tastes really weird and stuff. And after that, she got really sick. And that's it. That's pretty much all I remember.
The topic of cyanide came up with Jessica's response being,
There's a lot of things that I'm not allowed to say, like in public, including stating things like, I didn't do what people think that I did.
It had come to light that Jessica's ex-boyfriend had apprehended a violence order out against her. Jessica would simply laugh.
It was kind of like toxic in a way. We didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of things, but it was complicated. It's not how it seems.
Jessica would then be asked if she had the potential to be violent. She would reply,
No, of course not. What would I do?
As of today, Jessica Wongso will remain on parole until 2032.